Hey, everybody, welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson, and we are continuing our My Five series. And this time we have Phil Penman. Phil Penman, one of the great current street photographers out there. He is British born, based in New York. And let's see, you were a photojournalist working for magazine or places like The Guardian and The Independent and Daily Telegraph and Paris Match. And now you are mostly a street photographer. How do you refer to yourself when you think about yourself as a photographer?
Yeah, it's been trying to think. Everyone likes to put you in a box, right?
Yeah,
So
well,
if I had to put a box in it, I'd go fine art street photographer. And it's interesting. I was listening to an interview by Mark Fernley on a podcast not that long ago, and he identifies himself as fine art street photographer. And the people said, "Well, there isn't really that category." And I said, "Well, there is now." So there you are.
Well, I would like to be a part of that category at some point, maybe if I get good enough. I should say for everybody watching, if you have not seen Phil Penman's 9/11 images, they are amazing, and they're included in the National 9/11 Memorial in the permanent archive there. And I also just want to say at the end of this, we're going to talk a little bit about Phil's new book, which I'm hoping to get my hands on at some point. So stick around for that in just a little bit. But Phil, so when I asked you to do this My Five piece, where you talk about five images, what did you, a lot of people have been telling me it's kind of hard to come up with those five images. What did you think about? What did you go through when making that decision about what five images you were going to talk about?
I think it came down to like the ones that really inspired me and kind of led me down this path to where I am now as a photographer. So I was like, well, which ones had like that aha moment when you look at it in front of you, right? And I remember there was one of them, which we'll talk about, the Alexei Tidorenko, where
Yeah.
I wasn't really familiar with his work, but I went to Paris Photo and I'm stood there and I'm like, holy shit, that's good. Like that's really good. When I picked my five, I was like, those are the five that I went with. The aha moments.
Excellent. Well, let's take a look at those five aha moments with Phil Penman's My Five Images. So, Mr. Penman, we have five images from five great photographers. Let's start with your number one. Tell us who this is and why did you choose this amazing shot?
So this is probably my favorite portrait photographer. It's a guy called Arnold Newman. It's a portrait of Igor Stravinsky, shot in 1946. If you look at like the original, it's actually quite a heavy crop. He would shoot pretty large format stuff, but this was a crop of that. You can see it online. Newman was he's I don't know, titled with the popularization of environmental portraiture, which is what I did a lot of. And believe it or not, I saw this picture first when I was studying in college. I was probably like 18, 19, and a friend of mine found his book in a trash can near where we lived and brought this book. It was called Artists. And that's how I discovered Newman's work. And I saw this portrait and I was just like, holy shit. Especially like being a black and white photographer, the tones in this, the composition, just absolutely mind blowing to me. The simplicity of it. So when I was a news photographer, early on, I used to get asked to go and do portraits of artists, and I would actually try to emulate some of Newman's work from this.
How'd you do with that?
You just can't come close. it's so you just look at you go through his book and you're just like, wow. I think if I could own anything to put on my wall, it would probably be this one.
It's a good one, as are your other four images, and this is your number two. Tell us about this, sir.
So Jimmy Armstrong. This is the name of a dwarf that worked as a clown out in New Jersey. The shot was taken by Bruce Davidson. I believe the shot was in 1958 when Davidson was actually working for Magnum, and this was, I think he was 24 years old when he shot this, if you can believe it. He'd only done like, Davidson was kind of mentored by Cartier-Bresson, and this was like one of his first assignments, I think. And it's just one, the tones, you know, the atmosphere, the background, but the loneliness, the expression. Davidson, you know, he did a whole, you can look it up, there's a whole series on this circus. It's out in New Jersey. But for me, it's like, you know, you can see obviously the smile is painted on the but I don't know, it's just there's something about this, the composition, you know, you look even like the black and the white on the tent, the way that it's kind of it's not frame centered like you typically might see, you know, it's kind of a little bit left off center. It's just great composition. And you can see that he's probably spent quite a bit of time with this guy, Jimmy, to get comfortable. And I think I read that he said that the Jimmy could actually tell that Davidson was more interested. He knew what he was going for. You know, it wasn't the painted, it was like the loneliness.
Well, it's captured all there. And it's again, I mean, I've said it a number of times on this segment, is just sometimes when you live with these images and you listen to a learned photographer like yourself talking about it. I mean, I've seen this image time and time again through decades, and just sitting here and looking at it and looking at the wilted flowers, and that it's clearly been raining and it's muddy and there are two people off with their back to him. It all sort of adds to that lonely feeling that you get from this. I'm so glad you showed this. Thank you so much.
It's like it's the layers, you know. Yes. I try to, it influences all of this stuff, influences your own work. This really influenced mine, and just like how you layer an image and how you can add atmosphere to add, you know, really give it some oomph. So this is a classic example of that.
But it's layers, not only like visual layers, but it's like emotional layers. And, you know, there's so many different layers of layers.
Yeah, so, very complex.
Thanks for showing this. And now on to the humor. I love this Elliott Erwitt image. Talk about this one.
So the Elliott Erwitt, that was shot, I think that was in Pasadena. Again, Elliott Erwitt's like a magnum photographer. This is from a book, Personal Best. It's one of my favorite photography books by Elliott Erwitt. And again, it's like layer upon layer. So you've got, obviously, this is like the lost persons area, a carnival or something like that, where you collate your kids. But it's like, you know, the double entendre is like, you know, who's really lost, you know? You've got these either the lost souls of these women. There's so many different layers to this that you could read into it. And it's just, and the humor as well. Like, I think shooting photography, humor in photography, is probably one of the hardest things to do, because it can be so easily misinterpreted, or you could be very condescending.
Yep.
So
yeah,
humor is just,
humor is one of those things that just ends up getting somehow dated so easily. And yet Elliott Erwitt, in all of these images, and even like this one, this is never going to be dated. I don't think. I mean, it doesn't feel like it now. And I just love the little gestures, like the woman on the left, just sort of looking off to see what it's.
And the wit with the baby as well, even the way the baby's sprawled out. Yeah, this is in the 60s. It's, you know, what's incredible. You look at these images, how many years ago these were taken, and you can have all the fangled cameras in the world with all the tools, but it's still, you're never going to get these. You know, it's capturing a moment, right?
Yep, greatness is there no matter when it is. So away from the humor to another one of the greats, Sebastian Salgado.
Yeah, shit. No, just absolutely mind-blowing. This is Calcutta. You know, what do you say? I believe they've actually closed off this. You can't go and get this picture anymore. But the use of shutter speed, just I try to do similar things to this, like where you use shutter speed to really tell a story.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's probably my favorite photographer by far.
Yeah, I can see why. And your final image, and another one that was very pleasing for me to open up when you sent it along, Alexei Todorenko.
Yeah, this is the one I saw at Paris Photo. So I was reading up a little bit on this because it's so the story goes apparently like these are factory workers. So when the USSR kind of collapsed, they would the whole economy kind of, all the pensions evaporated and they had to figure out ways to make money. So they would go to these factories and they would buy these cigarettes, and then they would sell these cigarettes are kind of illegal. So apparently if you see like the one with the hat in the left, right?
Yes.
Apparently that person's kind of like looking for police. And he would always he used like this big Hasselblad and he would stick it on a tripod. And he's using the people to kind of block him photographing these people selling. It's just absolute magical shot. And then you see this as a print. He prints all his own work as well. So, but you see this in person. It's one of the best things I've seen.
I mentioned before that we were going to talk about your book, and I want to do that. So you have now just published a book. Is it available in the States at this point, or is it soon to be available in the States?
And can you soon to be? Yeah, of course. I literally got one copy that I got sent. So it's New York Street Diaries.
Great cover.
Published with Tenoyos, who the reason I actually went with them was because they did Personal Best, Elliot Erwitt, and I saw that book and I was like, wow. So I reached out to them, sent them kind of a cold call email, not expecting anyone to get back to me. And then of course they said, yeah, we'd love to do a book with you. So did that. It's in Germany now and it released, and I was kind of shocked. It went straight to #1. So very happy with that on Amazon. And yeah, you should be able to get it in October.
Excellent. So is it possible to pre-order, or is it something that they need to order? Folks need to order when it comes out in October?
No, you can pre-order it now. It was sitting from the pre-orders. It was sitting as the #1 new release.
Excellent.
So if you go, probably the best place to get it is Amazon. I hate to say it.
Well, we will see if we can put a link in the show notes down below so that people can go and get a pre-order, because I'm sure that that's a good one. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Phil Penman, thank you so much for joining us here on the Crit House for the My 5 series. Great images, and thank you for always being such a great supporter of this program. It's greatly appreciated. And thanks you all for watching the Crit House.